In the culture of conveyor belt movies, where creativity has taken a back seat to studios churning out big budget profit films, riding heavy on franchises, sequel films co opting nostalgia, and each film coming out drabber than the last, there has arisen one more form of formulaic film: the biopic. More specifically, the rockstar biopic. Like the nostalgia film, these films are cruel because they fit lives of people who we have admired, loved, and been moved by into a narrow narrative that is both hyper focused on some events but also trying to cover too much breadth, focused almost on the wrong events. The plot goes something like this: an artist, a natural legend, rises to fame. Their greatness is, of course, innate, and so the movie never tries to explore the construction or the work of that greatness. He has loved ones around and band members who just sort of hang around. The guy gets too famous for his own good and gets carried away by debauchery. Fame, riches, infidelity, drugs, the usual. And he becomes less cool. People around him aren't having it, they get angry at him, accuse him of forgetting what is really important, threaten to abandon him. The rock star remembers their morals, somehow, also because of a fatal disease. Okay, sure, in this case the disease did really happen, but let's focus on the placement of it in the narrative. The rock star then remembers what is really important and does the greatest, most important concert ever. And this is supposed to be the redemption of them now. A good person who was swayed by fame and riches but are now performing for a good cause. Luckily, the artist's discography plays in the back while all of this happens. I expected Bob Marley's revolutionary spirit to carry into his biopic. And though the film is about him and not about Rastafarianism or about his political ideologies, Marley embodies them. As he says, the messenger is the message.
For we, the music and the message are the same thing.
But he too was boxed into this rockstar narrative. So let's start with one thing: the hard work that artists put into creating their music. In Bohemian Rhapsody, Freddie Mercury is sitting at a piano when the song Bohemian Rhapsody just sprints out of his fingers and mouth so rapidly that even he is there in shock. And Bob Marley randomly plays Redemption's song to perfection, sitting beside a fire, a song that he had been writing
All my life.
Now the thing is, I don't believe that this is not real. After all, they do show the work that goes into some of the songs. There is a whole montage of Another One Bites the Dust that comes in just from a bass line. Similarly, Exodus slaps out of a beat that Marley ad-libs when he gets inspired upon hearing the theme from the movie Exodus. Both the artists are also shown to be perfectionists, pushing their bandmates to get the vibe down right. While it makes sense for Bob Marley to base his judgment on vibes than technicalities, we don't see why they're writing something like this or where it comes from. I really want to believe that these artists were overcome by a mystical outflow of creativity before they wrote their magnum opus. But it just seems so similar. It's curious. When Bob Marley says he has been writing Redemption song his whole life, we just don't see why. It feels like the movie expects us to know, to get it by now, that emancipation and peace are the great themes of Marley's life. But what is he singing about? Emancipation from what? What kind of suffering has he witnessed? It's such a powerful song, but the movie somehow strips it from all of its power, choosing to focus instead on tour dates and Paris parties. What you choose to include in a biopic is heavily subjective. So why am I calling it formulaic? Because the two narratives, Bohemian Rhapsody and Bob Marley's One Love, are eerily structured similarly. And even if that is how a story arc is told, these stories seem more invested in that specific arc than in the person. So, what do I wish they showed me instead in the Bob Marley movie? 1. How Bob Marley got linked with revolutionary acts. 2. How he started creating music and rose to fame. It was a given that he was a big star in Jamaica from the chronological beginning of the film. There were some narrative roots to it in the Wailers giving their first audition for recording an album and showing their unique non-American mimicry sound. But this sound was still quite different from what became of Bob Marley. No growth, no breakthroughs, nothing like that is showcased in the film. When Marley moves to England early on in the film, he already has access to a private jet, a producer, and a Western audience who loves him. How did he get there? We don't know. We just accept that he was always fantastic. 3. How his songs came into being. Like we said, beyond one or two montages and beyond the guitar riff provided by Junior Marvin that lent Exodus its sound, the lyricism just comes to Marley completely unprovoked. 4. What the cultural impact of his songs was and why. We get a sudden montage of people headbanging wildly in the audience while he's playing at a concert, and that's about it. We don't see how his music broke out, why it became popular in Jamaica or in the West, and what kind of a movement the music channeled. 5. His childhood struggle. The movie constantly references his struggle, his unnamed intense struggle. But beyond a vague and abstract motif of a man on a horse, who may be his white father but then maybe is not, standing in front of him as he runs across a ring of fire, we get nothing. If this was some poetic symbol for what really happened in his childhood, then I didn't get it. But you'd expect that a biopic would give you enough context to get it. What else is it for if not that? The movie expects us to know everything already. This scene with the ring made no sense, for example, and therefore it had no impact. I had to go look it up to find out that the ring belonged to Emperor Haile Selassie himself, and his son gave Bob the ring, and Bob wore it for the rest of his life. Now, I don't hate the movie. I enjoyed it. It showed us a Nyabingi ceremony, showed us how Rita, his wife, got him into Rastafarianism, showed us beautiful Caribbean landscapes, gave us some political context. I'll give it credit. It depicted the financial dispute in Jamaica, extramarital affairs, but only a little bit because we don't know how open Bob and Rita's marriage really was. Considering that they both had children extramaritally, Bob many more, we can only guess whether or not the jealous blow-ups like the kind in the film happened. But the fact that Marley fathered one of Rita's children in real life is perhaps testament that even if jealousy did take place, it was not the central or climactic event in their relationship, like it is depicted in the movie. It's like a moral statement on how Bob is going astray and sleeping with all these other women, and now he needs to be put back in place. It's almost like the characters in these biopics have no character, no spine, no motivation. It's only their loved ones who shake them out of debauchery towards this life-changing arc that gets them to perform at the great concert. Now that they're a good person who was swayed away by fame and riches, they are now performing for a good cause. In Bohemian Rhapsody, Freddie wants to perform at Live Aid because
of very personal reasons. Because he loves to perform, because he's dying, because he misses his band family, because it's the biggest concert in the world. African people never even come up before this moment. But now that he's talking to his father, it's some very good deed, representative of a spirit of giving and charity.
it makes him seem like a phony. And that's exactly what Bob Marley comes off as in One Love. For example, after Bob learns about his cancer, he decides to return to Jamaica. And while the real Bob Marley may not have returned to Jamaica because he had cancer and was going to die anyway and was not scared of death in the same way anymore, that is exactly what the movie sets it up to look like. When in an interview he answers that the reason that he is now doing the One Love concert in Jamaica is because
my life is not important to me. My life is only for me, my own security. I don't want it.
the philosophical Rastafari impact of that is really low and really blunt, because the movie just showed us that he is dying. The stakes have changed dramatically. Also because up until now, Bob is shown to have no longing to return, no desire to change the wind in Jamaica, to go back and contribute. He accepts the offer of returning out of nowhere after he discovers his cancer. Marley also gives up thinking about the violence in Jamaica for most of the film, remembering only his assassination attempts. He is just strolling along in London when opposing gang leaders, Claude Massop and Bucky Marshall, approach him to play at the One Love Peace concert. And nothing about that interaction moves him in any way. Both the movies lend their leads very little agency, very little character. They strip them of everything that makes them likable. Where they do regain agency is somehow to do with the disease. Let's talk more about the cancer. Bob Marley had a rare form of cancer that did not allow him to heal from an injury, and it was an injury to the toe that made doctors notice the condition. In reality, while yes, Bob did not want to amputate his foot, and maybe it does factor in that he was told he couldn't dance if that happens, he did undergo other surgeries to have his nail removed. But in the movie, he heroically does not treat his melanoma because,
My life is not important to me. I have work.
sound familiar?
If you bore me with your sympathy, that's just seconds wasted. Seconds that could be used making music, which is all I want to do with the time I have left.
Why? Why was it shown like that? Why can't Bob Marley want to try and treat his cancer? Why must he be this martyr? Why can't Freddie let his bandmates be sad for him? In both the movies, the disease is inspirational. Refusing to be put down by it, the star is an inspiration who wants to return to their true love, just making music. Bob Marley's pain and sacrifice, the suffering that shaped his outlook and ideologies, are told, not shown. Hell, they barely even told. Just the word suffering are thrown at us, with no explanation of what the suffering is. The experience of being the child of a slave, the complexity of it is fertile ground to explore Marley's story. And even if it cannot be depicted in all of its complexity, the movie shies away from it completely. At the end of the movie, they show a clip of the real Bob Marley. An interviewer asks him if he is rich, and he asks him,
Position make you rich?
for the Marley that they showed in the film, it seems like his own answer might be yes. The movie focuses on Marley's trauma in an innately individual, extremely personal sense. It focuses on the shooting in his house. That is what scares him away from Jamaica. But what motivated him to take the stage in the first place? What provoked the shooting? What ideology did Bob stand for and stand against? When he returns to Jamaica after his injury, it is this personal pain and suffering that he is overcoming, and not the ideology that is getting him to stand on stage. The belief of Jah, the idea of oneness, of the collective, that the characters of the movie espouse, is not embodied by the movie. The form of the narrative is an empty shell that does disservice to the story and its characters. The thing is, I don't know what this movie serves, what it contributes to the life and legacy of Bob Marley. The fact that I came out of the film learning not too much about him is confusing. What are these movies being made for? Is it to depict reality? To portray the legacy? Then why doesn't it focus on that? Why doesn't it focus on why Bob Marley never lost his faith and his central purpose? While there are biopics that are pretty good and that are not going for the one-size-fits-all narrative, it's important to call out a pattern when one sees it. Maybe if we stop trying to fit real people into easy textbook plots, we might be able to make films that fit the people they depict.
Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery.